in your 40s plus, you're not falling behind. You're actually finally awakening. You're not falling behind. You are actually becoming. You see, this is a time where truth rises, masks fall, and you finally feel a real sense of yourself stepping forward. My name is Peter Abundant, aka Dr. Abundant, PhD and ordained minister of metaphysical sciences, the study of spirituality, the author of The Enlightened Shadow and Spiritual, Not Religious, available on Amazon and Audible. As somebody who is 47, I've come to a better understanding of my spiritual journey throughout these several years while in my 40s. And what I've come to understand is that there are basic pillars, things that you begin to recognize in your 40s that are very, very important along the spiritual journey that is impossible to really experience when you're in your 20s, even your 30s. And so I want to share with you these things, 5 things that actually prove that you are awakening, that you are actually becoming that which you desire to be, that you are beginning to let go of who you thought you were in your 20s and 30s and actually coming into a true understanding as to who you really are. One of those things is really getting an understanding that you gain clarity about things, right? You gain clarity about what is really good, what is really bad, what is really ideal, and what isn't ideal. And you gain this clarity through contrast. You gain this clarity by really being able to have so much experience that you gain true perspective as to life and what life is about. When we are younger, in our 20s, in our 30s, we think we have an idea what life is supposed to be about. But when we get into our 30s, we get more of an understanding that it isn't exactly what we once thought. We get an understanding as to who we are along this journey of life. So things like your jobs, relationships, belief systems, right? They no longer fit. They no longer fit what was shown to you, right? They no longer express or give you a sense of really owning, right, who you are now. And so those things begin to fall away because you now start to understand like the questioning that once took place. Because in your 20s, you kind of think you have it figured out, even younger than that. But when you get to your 30s, things are not actually lining up, right? Life isn't materializing and hasn't manifested in the ways in which you thought it would in your 20s. And so then those ideas, right? Those jobs, those relationships, the beliefs, they start to get challenged. And with challenge, the blessing about challenge is those things begin to get questioned. And that's when they begin to fall away. And that's where you, the true you, begin to rise up. Because these limiting beliefs, these old relationships, you recognize that they do not align with who you are beginning to understand yourself to be. So it is actually really stepping into the understanding as to what really matters, besides the things that were given to you or programmed within you or told by others as to what matters. You really understand the difference between what matters to them or what they think should matter to you. It may not even matter to them, right? But then they're telling you something that even goes against the way they live themselves. And then they are giving that to you. You are taking it. You are applying it. You are in a space where you know, right? But then you realize throughout the growth of getting into your 30s and now 40s that that wasn't right. Okay. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to not feel a sense of anger or resentment for that wisdom that was given to you, that suggestion, those opinions, because it still led you to this point. It still led you to this awakening. You see, you have to experience the false in many cases in order for you to have the contrast of recognizing that it is false, to actually implement it, try it out, experiment, for you to actually recognize this isn't what resonates with who you are learning and understanding yourself to be. And so then you have to let those things go. And that's what exactly is taking shape and you are beginning to take ownership of in your 40s. And this is why it's important to recognize that 40s isn't something that you just say, well, life is over for me, right? 50s, 60s, 70s. The truth of the matter is life is just beginning. True understanding as yourself, of yourself, is just beginning. And so then when it comes to recognizing and gaining clarity through contrast, you begin to have an understanding that your experiences are actually what provides you with wisdom. Because you have these experiences, because even if the experiences didn't line up as you once thought they would in your 20s and 30s, you understand now that in your 40s, that still, that experience is precious. Those experiences actually give you more than what you had desired them to create for you in those 20s and 30s, because now you have wisdom. Wisdom is by far the most precious, valuable asset that you can have. We often talk about not having wisdom, but not having the youth and the strength and the endurance. But wisdom is actually the ability to apply knowledge toward getting something a lot quicker than it does when you have the strength and endurance. Because most times we can observe in those ages of our 20s and 30s, there may be a lot of strength, there may be a lot of endurance physically, but that often goes and it is wasted because the wisdom is not there within that person, even yourself, when you look back at yourself in that age. You see, so there are many times where I can outthink, outperform people in their 20s and 30s because I have the wisdom. I have the wisdom and the understanding of what really works and what doesn't work. And that is going to actually help you and support you in you coming into a space where you recognize how this wisdom is a blessing. And it allows you to materialize and create things a lot quicker. Okay, because you've gone through the gauntlet of making mistakes, making errors, which really is opportunity, which really is learning, right? Gaining the wisdom and the insight. So you learn and understand that now in your 40s, those years of living has taught you essentially how to trust in your inner knowing, right? How to understand the importance of recognizing things like your intuition, your gut instinct, that voice that tells you to go right instead of left. But because of other people's opinions, you may have went left, you see, and then you came back, right, from their experience, having the end result and saying to yourself, I knew I should have went right. You see, now you have that understanding, you have that wisdom of and information that recognizes your conscious mind must be in tune with your intuition. Ultimately, your intuition is consciousness. That is your divine spark. That is the part of you that is one with the universe, one with that which we call God. And so when you recognize listening to that, it is usually when you're in your 40s. And that is when the true awakening happens, because you have experimented, you have tried other things, other people's ways. And now you recognize that their ways are their ways and it isn't yours. And so now you recognize that the path to your enlightenment, your happiness and fulfillment is predicated on you paving your own way. You recognizing that your way is by following consciousness and not just simply following other people's opinions, their thoughts, and maybe even their experiences. Though they may be at a space of success and ideally where you want to go, you still have to recognize that though they may give you a basic blueprint of how they got there, that is how they got there. You have to always recognize that you are different and that you are unique. They are unique. And so you have to put that in a perspective of understanding, okay, that's how they did it. Those things I will keep in mind as I traverse, right, my own trail, as I blaze my own trail, as I climb my own mountain toward the peak of success and happiness and understanding. Okay. The next thing when you are in your 40s and you're recognizing this spiritual awakening, you also recognize that pain has been a very important part of your awakening. Pain, which really is another way of saying the things that happen in your life that wasn't ideal, the things that happen in your life that you wouldn't probably wish on your worst night, your worst enemy, right? But they were necessary because they allowed you to gain insight, to gain clarity as to who you are, how you respond to things, how you act, right? Your knowledge, your skills. It gives you a clear picture of the things that you can improve upon, right? The things that you are strongest at. And therefore, it gives you a reflection, a mirror image of yourself. It allows you to see yourself. And with that, you are able to maneuver through a lot of obstacles and opportunities by way of knowing yourself, by way of recognizing, okay, these are my habits, these are my patterns, these are my strengths, these are my quote unquote weaknesses. These are places where I can improve and grow. And so as you maneuver through creating the things that you desire and you wish to materialize, you now have the perspective of understanding all of that history as a reference point of what you did, what it created, right? Did it create the result that you want or did it not? And thus you have the insight, the wisdom to say, okay, you know what? I'm going to take a different route. But it is because of things like pain or what Buddha says is suffering, you have that perspective. This is why, very important, why we must consider pain, misfortune, traumatic events. We must consider those things as blessings because truly they provide you with insight. They provide you and help to direct you toward who you truly are. And when you're in your 40s, you begin to understand that. You begin to have the foresight, the ability to look back, to recognize the patterns, and then decide, you know what, as a result of those decisions that I made and the life that I'm living now, I need to make different decisions moving forward for the remainder of this experience or this, thing we call life. All right. This game we call life. And like any game, right, you observe what happens and then you adjust. You adjust your players, right? You adjust your strategy. The players are things like your subconscious mind, your conscious mind, how you speak, how you think, how you feel, the people you're around, all those elements and tools that you use towards manifestation and spirituality, you use that in this next half, right? In the next quarter. And so this is why it's important to recognize the power of being in your 40s and plus when you're on the spiritual journey, because this is the most important, most pivotal moment of spiritual awakening. It is great when people have a spiritual awakening in their 20s and 30s, but truly, when you're in your 40s, you have much more to build upon. You have much more to really lay your bricks on, much more of a foundation to build this house of fulfillment and success and joy when you are actually in your later years. So look at this time as a blessing, right? Look at the things that happened to you in the past, life struggles, loss, rejection, change, which is always inevitable. Look at those things as means of life the ego, your consciousness, helping you to break through. Okay. You want to break through the illusions and you want to truly discover your strength. And it is through those experiences, by really being led by consciousness, approaching those experiences with love, compassion, and grace for yourself, then you get to actually begin the true awakening. Many times people can hold on to those struggles. They can identify with those struggles. And that's not something you want to do. That is something, or a way of being led by the ego that is attached to fear, right? It is attached to the separation of yourself and the universe. But when you are led by consciousness and you recognize the blessing, the beauty of those struggles, then you recognize, wait a minute, these are opportunities, these are things, blessings, right? That will shake things up, give me perspective. So that way I can break down and get through the illusions of the false self, the ego, and discover your strengths, which is based on consciousness and who you truly are. The next thing when awakening in your 40s is you're no longer performing for others. That is probably the easiest thing to witness and recognize within yourself when you hit 40s and above, is that you're no longer concerned about what other people think. Okay. And it starts to dissolve, it starts to go away, where you're just not concerned about other people's thoughts, because you recognize that, one, it will lead you down a path of being lost in the approval of others. Because when you even gain the approval from others, it still leaves you vacant. It still leaves you in a place of not being fulfilled, satisfied, happy. It leaves you in a place of not being aligned with your true self. And so at the age of 40 and up, you start to outgrow the need to please and to prove yourself to others. The only person that you are pleasing is yourself. The only person you are proving anything to is yourself. And once you start to recognize that, then it becomes this thing where in your 40s, you start to own yourself. You start to truly love yourself. You start to truly recognize and see yourself, accept yourself, you see. And then you've come to a place where you're more committed. You're more committed to authenticity than approval, right? You recognize that being your truest self is in fact the best way to be for yourself. You see, and then the irony of all of that, because you don't care about other people's opinions and their approval of you, and you're in a space of being authentic, you actually tap into that from others. But it's ironic because now you are so detached from their approval and you are being in a space of authenticity with self, people then to look at you differently. They begin to respect you, honor you. You see, it's interesting because when we actually learn to detach ourselves from things, those things become magnetized to us. They become attracted to us because we're not desperate. We're not chasing it down. You see, when we recognize that you are more powerful than that thing, then you see how valuable, how amazing, how beautiful you are. And then that releases you from the bondage of looking for some outside validation, some outside source of approval and love, and recognizing that the only way to truly get that is by giving it and providing it for yourself. Once you realize that, that is actually when you begin to receive it from others, when you begin to experience it from outside of you, right? Which is really just a layer of you, but that's a whole nother conversation. The universe is one with you, essentially. So though we recognize ourselves separate than this outside world or other people, we are one. It is one with you. It is an expression of you. Okay. And then the final thing, when it comes to being in your 40s plus and recognizing you awakening, is that you're ready to just constantly, consciously create your life. Like you're on this sense of a mission, you know? And for some people, they call it like a midlife crisis, right? Or you recognize that you need to make this big shift because the life you have been living and creating, you recognize that it was all a facade. You recognize that it was part of the mask. It was a lifestyle of the mask that you were wearing because you were trying to get approval. You were trying to be accepted. You were trying to be loved. You wanted your parents to approve of your life path. You wanted people to recognize you. And so as you are on this conscious awakening in your 40s, you see, hey, that life is not who I really am. And many people are scared to recognize that. They're scared to create the life that is aligned with their authentic self, you know, but eventually you get there. You recognize it, and it brings up some fear. It brings up some discomfort because this is the majority of your life, right? That you are now wanting to change, transform. And so now you're at a point where you're recognizing, okay, you're looking back and you're saying, wait a minute, this doesn't bring joy, happiness, success, fulfillment to me. This does not match my authentic self. My authentic self is pushing and trying to come out. And if I don't release that, if I don't free that, then that you feel a sense of heaviness. You feel a sense of depression, like you're almost dying in the inside. So you must honor that authentic self. You must honor and be aware that with things like self-awareness, courage, the quest for freedom, you must allow yourself to be driven by that and recognize that because you are an expression of the divine spark, you cannot fail. There is a part of you that understands that. And so as you go down this journey, as you awaken, all of these things are going to begin to express itself. It's going to begin to push itself out. So I invite you, do not resist. Choose the life that reflects your truth, not your past. The past doesn't matter. Don't be attached to that past life because that was just part of the journey of awakening to your truth. It isn't your truth. It is just the journey of finding truth. And so now, as you are coming into awakening, the next challenge, the next threshold is to let go of the things that don't align with who you are. Recognize yourself, recognize your truth. And when you do that, then you can move forward in creating the life that you authentically, truly want. Remember, this is your moment, okay? So stop doubting, stop worrying about your timing, stop feeling like, oh, I wish that if I knew the things that I know now, back then, my life would be different. If I knew then, right, what I know now, then I would do this, I would do that. Just simply embrace the clarity that you have now, the power that you have now, the freedom, right, that 40 brings. You can't do the same things that you were able to do when you were in your 20s. You're at a different place. You have access to different abilities, a certain mindset. So embrace that, okay? Begin consciously creating the life that you are always meant to live. Don't get stuck in the past and identifying with that past self. That wasn't yourself in the first place. That was simply the process, the journey of being yourself now. Thank you so much. Feel free to go to drabundant.com, subscribe to my daily newsletter, and get access to this free ebook, The Power Within. Continue to join me on this journey. Peace and abundance always.